All right. We are live now. I'm just going to wait for some people to join before we get involved in this, and I'm going to take a sip of my magic caffeine.
Magic caffeine?
Yep.
Is that like a pill?
If they had it in pill, I would take it that way for sure.
Crystal, don't tell them. They do.
Save me a lot of trouble.
I'm sure.
Oh my goodness.
8 o'clock. Where is everybody? Give people a few seconds to log on here. Here we go. Okay. All right. So here we go. Hello, Jane. Hello, Brenda. How is everyone tonight? This is Tuesday night, December 22nd. And as promised, Master Yoda, Nancy Weber is joining us. Hello, Dana. Hello, John. Colleen, how is everyone? You are in for a very interesting, very mind-opening, enlightening conversation. I've had more Yoda-isms in the last 10 minutes than I think I've had in the last 5 years from Nancy. But Nancy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Do you want to first describe who you are and what you do first, and then we'll get in, or do you just want to, we can hit on one aspect. I know there's a lot of things that you do.
It's okay.
But I'll let you go ahead and describe who you are and what you do.
Well, first, thank you, John. I have known of your work for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Right. And before that,
yeah, you still talk to me.
Also, and I still talk to you. Occasionally.
Right.
Just, okay. Crystal, help.
We'll get on point now. We'll get on point.
So I started off many different paths like everybody does. One of the things that was around since pretty much pre-birth actually is I never lose consciousness except under very odd circumstances. So I remember my birth. I had a being. I didn't know it was a being. I didn't know it wasn't another person by my crib, and he would teach me. So flash forward many years, I worked as a nurse, and in nursing, I loved working with my hands and healing, making stuff up as I went. But I also found that I thought everybody could see what's wrong sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And doctors would say, well, why are you saying that? When somebody got wheeled in for congestive heart failure, and I would say, that's not CHF. Do an upper GI series. And go, what? And I was 19. You know how 19-year-olds can be. I know everything.
So where was this information coming from though at the time, do you think?
I could see. I thought everyone had kind of occasional kind of what we'll call x-ray vision.
Okay.
I could see something in the chest and not the heart.
Wow.
And so they did it, and he said, how did you know that? And I said, you don't see. And I never forgot that because of the way he looked at me. He said, I'm coming back to you whenever I have a question. I said, sure. And I didn't put it together. Many years and many things happened. And I was 31 when I was at a dead end in some things and other things not. And I had to go back to the beginning and take deep breaths. Within 6 months, I was working all the hours I ever would want to work in my entire life as a psychic, giving medical intuitive readings in 1975.
Okay.
And that grew. In 1980, when I moved to Jersey in 79, I became the animal communicator, medical intuitive, psychic. In 1980, the police came to me over something, and that started me working with law enforcement in the town, then in the country, in the state, then federally, then internationally.
But somewhere in that mix is the psychological field and that aspect.
Yeah.
Could you just touch on that again, what you did there?
Oh, sure. Oh, okay. So I always was in love with reading psychology and psychiatry and just wanting to know the difference. Lots of us do this. You sit on a bus, you live in a city or anything, and I make up stories about everybody's life. And I think that's common for a lot of us. We're curious, why are they sitting that way? What do they think? When I got a job in the psych unit, it was unusual because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. And one day a woman was it was in the South Bronx, and she was cursing back and forth in front of my desk, and it was like an open living room. And she was saying something that I won't repeat, but I thought it was about me. And then I looked up, and when I looked up, I saw she was a beautifully deep, dark chocolate skin, gorgeous. But she was about 66, and she had been locked up 20 years in her apartment, burning herself.
Oh my God.
So her daughter took her to us. Daughter was married and would feed her, bring her food. So I look up, and there's this white-skinned, blonde, long-haired named Celia in her that I see right in her abdomen by her solar plexus. I jump up and I go, "Who's Celia?" And she goes, "You see her?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "I bet I know what happened." She said, "Yeah, that so-and-so was in bed with my husband in my bed in South Carolina where they had lived." I said, "And he threw you out?" She said, "He did. He locked me out of the house." And I said, "You're trying to burn her out." She said, "And I will." I said, "You don't have to." And she said, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "I'll teach you. I know how." I said, "We're going to do an exorcism because you're very religious." And she said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Okay." So I talked with her as a friend, and 10 days later, I went home with her. And I saw all the Santos, the saint statues around, and I gathered them around in a circle for her. I come from my grandma was an Orthodox Jew who broke every rule book ever on Orthodox Jews for love. She taught me unconditional, do what you like. So I put my hands on Florence's head, and I prayed in the name of Christ and God, and did a cross and crossed her, and all the others be gone, and whatever I said at the moment. And I looked at her, I said, "How you feeling now?" She said, "It's gone." I said, "Okay." And we did a year-long visit. We would go, for a year, we would follow up every week. Taught her how to shop, how to cook. Her daughter pitched in, everybody pitched in, and she was fine.
Wow.
So
See,
that was the start for me, the synthesis of a lot of mind body was always a curiosity. What causes anything? What causes us to be psychic? What causes us to know things? What causes us to be whacked out, if you will?
Right.
What causes us to have belief systems that cannot budge?
Well, that's what you and I talked about. And that's why I want you to touch on the psychological and the nursing and everything, because again, one of the reasons that I was so drawn to you was because you're not like any of the other psychic mediums that I've met. Usually, a lot of them lean more religious, and we talked about this. They call upon archangels, and they do this and that and the other. But when you and I were talking, I told you about my foundation, how it's just it's a fear of death. That's how I started in the paranormal. I was afraid of dying. I'm still afraid of dying because I'm not completely sure of whatever happens after. And I think someone like you, who is so well-rounded, and we talked about this before, when you're talking about spirits, you're talking about people who came before. And most of it, we're talking about people. There is a big-time psychological aspect to dealing with anyone, whether it's the person in front of you or someone in the afterlife. And I was saying to you about, you go into a home, and if I'm a skeptic and I don't really follow religion, and you're coming in to kind of cleanse the house, and I'm a spirit who never believed in any of that, am I going to leave just because you're throwing around some water and you're saying some prayers? I mean, honestly, these are like the things that are in my head. And we were talking about this a lot. And like I said, you were, answering a lot of questions and kind of filling in some gaps for me. And that's why I said I was kind of drawn to you. And we talked about how trauma, every psychic medium that I've met, there's been trauma, some big trauma. We're not talking about they broke their toe when they were 4.
Right.
Do you believe
Some life altering.
that opens a door or
It
opens
does.
senses or
Not the only way. Look, first, I believe most people have some great trauma happen in their life,
right? Of course,
right?
in various degrees, though.
Well, not if you're in their shoes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
How do you measure it? So we can't,
Well,
because
I can measure it. If my big tragedy was that my flat tire stopped me from getting to a concert, or my whole entire family was wiped out by a tornado, yeah, that's pretty different.
Yeah, but you've known some really dark things. So to
I'm
you,
just
that's mild.
saying.
But to somebody who hasn't
No.
experienced or did, that might be.
exactly. For one person, trauma, first, let's define it, if you don't mind. So trauma is anything that is an event that doesn't cross from the right hemisphere to the left. That's brain. So it sets off the alarms, which sets off the adrenaline, which sets off the information going into the central nervous system and locks in and loops, patterns.
Right.
It creates a startle effect. It creates all kinds of chemical cascades that eventually can really put somebody into a serious depression, suicidal, all kinds of things, besides anything that's not biologically suited to a person.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a moment. There are petrochemicals, there's a whole industry of things that do not belong in the body and can cause neurotransmission errors. So what's trauma? By definition, it is either an event in which you're not capable of handling it well, whatever it is, because some people can be in the worst of situations and deal with it very effectively and courageously and come out of it without emotional wounds.
Yeah, but it does leave, like you said, a biochemical kind of or altering imprint in there somewhere,
How
right?
do you measure it?
Well, but this kind
measurable.
of segues into the psychic investigator part, though. I mean, honestly, you're picking up on a lot of that stuff when
So-
you're working on these
Sure.
types of cases.
But that's why one of the things I work with and love most is educating people and teaching on not, when I teach classes on whether it's mediumship, and it's a mixed bag. I don't stay with one. I want people to know that everybody's got all the abilities.
Yeah, you believe that, right? You believe everybody has. See, I don't believe that. I don't know why. I just
You have to practice. It's cool. Anything you practice gets better. But also, it's uncovering belief systems that don't work well for that.
right.
Okay? Put it that way. So when a belief system is so embedded, and it could be early on, it's who are you to be able to do something, etc. Right. I mean, how easy, right now it may be easier to break into anything paranormal. But back in the 70s,
Right.
I had people coming in 6 a.m. because they didn't want their wife, their husband. They were doctors. They didn't want everybody to know. And after the first year, I saw multiple changes where people were just coming any which way. Psychiatrists hired me to give readings for their clients. It was easier. But part of that I learned is my belief system changed. What I attracted was people not sure, because I wasn't sure that I wanted to do this. I was very reluctant. I mean, I did because it helped people at times and it helped me. So I thought, well, okay. I had no other way. I was disabled. I had 2 kids and no money. And so people came and I said, sure. And I wouldn't charge. And then they gave me gifts I couldn't use. And they didn't know I didn't have food on the table. So, and I started charging and I was afraid to ask for the money. And I went through the whole thing. Those are all belief systems.
Right.
I wasn't entitled. And so you go back to trauma. For that, I understood where my traumas came from. But I also knew I had been in a fire in a building. That wasn't traumatic for me at all. In fact, that was a great moment for me in terms of what I learned about the gifts. Okay. So that's why I'm saying there's no one answer.
Right, right. Well, that's what we were talking about before, and you know, I was saying to you, and when we were talking, you know, the more people you meet along your journey in this field, especially, um, there are people that kind of open up that door a little more, give you different perspectives, maybe do alter your beliefs a little bit. And that's what kind of I've gone through. I'm a skeptic, believe me. I got to see it to believe it.
You're a cynic.
I would say, yeah, I'm closed-minded when it comes to a lot of things. But there are certain people that I've met along the way that I can't explain what they do and how they do it. And or they have, like you said, they have such an opinion on things, and they make you think like, wow, you know, I never really thought in that direction. And that sort of is like one of those flow charts where my flow chart went here and then do. Now all of a sudden I meet someone who introduces a new perspective or idea, and my it goes this way a little, and then there's a whole bunch of new sub charts, yeah, and new questions.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we're ever going to grow and learn and stretch, right? We keep opening up new doors.
Right. All right, let's get into my notes here. I didn't write 5 pages of notes for nothing, Nancy. So we're gonna we're gonna get into this. Okay, the way I came to know Nancy was just by chance. I was on Amazon and I'm going through looking for something to watch. I already went through Tiger King and all that great stuff, and I see Psychic Investigators, and I'm like, what the heck is this now? I never heard of this show.
That's an old one, yeah.
So I'm scrolling and I'm looking for specifically New Jersey based episodes. And I watched 3 of them. One was with Frank St. James, who we had already met and interviewed. The other 2 were with Nancy. And I'll tell you, I was just like jaw dropped watching the
speechless.
episode because,
Speechless.
you know, there's a part of my brain going, you know, if there weren't detectives involved in the show, I'd have probably said this is another one of those, oh yeah, this really happened shows, you know, the psychic did this and did that. But because there were retired detectives and police officers validating all this stuff, you're like, holy crap, you know, this has to be kind of, you know, real. So I watched both episodes again for homework last night. And
Go to Sci-Fi Channel. It's a better show.
Sci-Fi?
Sci-Fi. Through the Eyes of a Killer. Paranormal Witness.
Is that the Amy Hoffman or
No,
is
but
it
it's a much better one.
okay, well, we're gonna go through that though, if you don't mind. We're gonna go through the Amy Hoffman though, if you don't mind, because I have meticulous notes here. So,
I think we know about it a little bit. I remember. I'm kidding.
I'm sure a lot of people, because I didn't know about it, and I'm not saying that.
Looking at me, and we're reading each other, so we're good. 2 women, and you know, just a little comment.
Should I leave? Am I?
No, listen. Women read each other easily, and we're used to it. So when you say, you know, can anybody be psychic? Women may not even call it that.
Wait, are we talking about psychotic or psychic now? When we're talking about? No, nothing.
I don't think it's funny as some of them I've heard, although you may have a point about some of us.
Yes.
We get a little whacked out and annoyed, particularly when men are not reading us.
I don't get it.
I know.
All right, let's get serious here.
Okay.
Okay, this is 1982, Parsippany, New Jersey. Amy Hoffman was a high school senior who was working a part-time job, and she disappeared. Right? Now, how did we go from there to you becoming involved in that case? Do you remember?
Sure. The night she went, I got a call from a couple I knew through an event I went to, a social event. And one of them had heard me on the radio. And so the woman calls me and she said, my daughter's best friend is missing. And I said, if you want me involved, you have to call the family or give them the name of Detective Lieutenant Ross English, who I work with, or they can contact the department they're working with and have them contact Ross. Either way, I said, but I'm not discussing it with you. What I saw immediately was that Amy was tortured, raped, naked, lying in a reservoir kind of thing, and brutally murdered, knife wounds all over her. And I wouldn't go there. And she kept insisting, and I kept insisting, I don't open that door at all to look or do anything with somebody who cannot do anything about it. I am sorry. No. If the police want to work with me, that's fine. Family wants to work with me. And I stopped there because, to say to you, I've worked with a lot of people. I do not tell them their kid's dead. That's not my job. And besides, I don't have proof. I'll never say that. It's not appropriate. So she hangs up, and the morning paper shows that Amy died, and they claim that she was fully dressed and she was fine. And they don't know cause of death. And she was in a reservoir. And I'm going, they're lying. So Bill Hughes was a detective in town at the time, and we were friends. I worked with his chief, essentially. And I had worked with Bill on a fire, I think, something. And so, and I lived half a mile from the station. So he drops by sometimes with coffee. His wife, I was friends with. And I said to him, why are they lying? He said, about what? So I tell him, and he goes, I don't know. That's a different town. Then Deidre O'Brien.
That's right. She was the second girl. Right.
She was the second one tossed out of a car on Route 80.
How soon was this after the first? Was it days or was it weeks or?
No, it was probably 10 days.
Oh, really? It was that soon? Wow. Okay.
Probably, but I'm not sure. And so he shows up at my door. I don't know. She was tossed out maybe the night, and then the morning they had the task force, because now it's two different people.
Yeah, and Deidre was stabbed, right? She was,
Well, no, I didn't know anything.
Okay.
You're jumping. I didn't know.
Okay, sorry.
I didn't know Deidre was dead.
Okay.
It wasn't announced, but there was a task force, and maybe, I'm not quite sure. I felt him coming out and didn't know what to do. Anyhow, at the door were two men, Bill and Jimmy Moore, who was captain at Homicide in Parsippany.
Okay.
And Bill said, we just came from a task force because there was another murder. And would you tell Jimmy what you told me about Amy? What happens in a task force is they then discuss the autopsy of Amy and cause of death and anything like that, which they had not before that, because she was killed in Randolph.
Okay.
A different town. I'm pretty sure. Anyhow, I tell him, and Jimmy looks at Bill and looks at me, and he said, can you come with us? I said, sure. And that's how we started.
Yeah, I watched that episode, and again, you try to picture in your head, especially, I think, was it Jimmy Moore? Had you worked with him previously? Didn't Billy get him involved?
Bill got him involved because they had to partner up in a task force, and he felt Jimmy was the most open-minded he could find. Bill knew me for 3 years by then. I had moved in 79. I became close to the first female police officer. She taught karate. We knew each other. This was a small town at that time.
Okay.
And because I worked with the police, I didn't have a number on my door. Nobody would give out where I lived. I was in the papers on some, I don't even know what, but Bill knew who I was. I knew who he was. I knew his kids. They were young at the time. So yeah, we were kind of a close knit for some of us.
Yeah, because I could imagine, again, with the police, especially like you're saying, you're talking about a time where it wasn't really mainstream as it is now. People talking about the paranormal and all these movies and everything. And police especially, you think that they would be afraid of their own reputation. We're working with who now? We're getting tips from.
Yeah. So
how did you convince Jimmy that
I
you?
told them what I saw about Amy, and they had just had that all confirmed at the
Okay.
task force meeting. So that was easy. We get in the car and we start driving around.
Okay, and what happened? I remember in my notes though, but this is really when things start coming to you, right? I mean, this is when.
Well, I knew, I had said to them, I got the name James pretty fast. I don't know why or what. And that I wanted to go through Morristown. We lived in Bud Lake at the time. So we drove through Morristown. I could feel in the area they know as the Hollow, where Martin Luther King Jr. Highway Road is. And I felt he was from there. He grew up there. And as we were driving again and again, it's very much, I call it the inner detective.
Okay.
I ask myself a lot of questions. I go over and over and over and over and over, just like detectives do. They go over, they nitpick everything. And that's what I do. I've always been that way, so it was a natural fit.
But what exactly are you going over? Are these just thoughts in your head? Are you hearing things? Like, where does the name James even come from?
Well, first it came one of the trips we made, and I don't remember all the sequence of trips, but one of them was to the reservoir. So we parked the car. I knew where it was. I had never been there, but I could feel the energy of the trauma. When you talk about trauma, I believe it's embedded. I've walked Yorktown Heights, Revolution. I could see things, So when I went there, I ended up reenacting what I believe is how Amy died. And I could see through her, connecting to her, him, James. And so I had a very clear vision of his face, extremely, that he was narrow faced, aquiline nose, dark hair, slim build. I wasn't sure about his height because she was down and she didn't know his name. But I felt it was a James and I didn't know more. And then we drove around. We drove Morristown. We went to Route 80.
Okay.
First we went to Washington Street in Morristown. And I got out and I said, this is where he got her. And there were tire marks still there.
Oh, wow.
And the tire marks, I said, are going to nail him. And then as soon as I said that, I said, there'll be a drop of blood on the seat, that's Amy's. And there's one hair that's Deidre's in the trunk. She was put in the trunk. That's how it would come. Just one thing would follow another.
That's amazing.
No, it's like, for me, it's like unraveling a sweater that's knit. You pull a thread and up comes another one.
It's just but are you seeing these things or they're just thoughts that pop into your head?
Some I see, some. I always had a photographic memory.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy for me to see, but I also hear, and sometimes it's just direct downloads. So I never.
Can I ask you real quick too? There was a quote in there that says that you kind of were connected to Amy when at the one spot. Do you feel the emotion of the incident as well, or is it just kind of a playback where there's?
Oh no, I was
feel
hysterical, crying, screaming.
Oh my God!
No, I had 105 fever after I worked on that case. Nope. No, I'm
So
right.
it physically affects you after
That's
the
horrible.
fact.
That's horrible.
Sometimes, well, not anymore. I learned how to be there fully so that I know the truth and work with the victim and not judge the perp in order to know the perp. You can't judge them, they'll close the door.
Right.
It's like anything else. Right.
So you remember the tire tracks. Did you actually see the murder take place in your?
Well, I kept seeing the car, and then we went to Route 80. But before we went to Route 80, pardon me, I need water. We kept driving around near where she was because she was going home. She worked at the library restaurant in Morristown, and she was on Washington Street and we ran her off. And I went, wait a minute, drive over this way. I do know there's a park. Drive through the park. And as we drove, I could feel he had her for hours in the park raping her.
God.
Right. And knifing her.
Mm.
And then
Wow.
threw her in the trunk. So he kept her for hours alive. And then he drove to Route 80. So we went to Route 80. And we parked right off at the rest stop. You know, it just dawned on me. I wonder if it's the same rest stop that Dave, what's his name, and Tom Manning killed the state trooper. Because I know that case too. So I don't know. That's funny. I never realized, put together until now. Maybe it's the same rest stop. I don't know.
You think it's like cursed or something? I mean, that.
I don't know. No, don't say that.
So Amy was killed in one place and dumped in another?
She was dumped at that rest stop, and I saw a truck, a driver. I see Deirdre banging on his door. She's naked. I see him with a CB. I see him opening the door, having a blanket and covering her and holding her body as she dies. And she's looking at him and says, thank you.
Ay.
And I thought, Deirdre, you are an amazing human being. You need to help me. And so she did. And Deirdre's right here. She's with us now listening because she's an amazing human being.
Wow.
23, I think, when she died.
Yeah, she was
She
young.
only cared that nobody else get hurt. And so I'm looking out and I see his car again and again, same one I described with Amy. I think it was greenish.
Yeah, it was green.
With a triple light backlights that were unusual. So, and I didn't know that a witness had already described those lights.
Wow.
From the Morris County Mall. I had no idea at that point. So I keep seeing it and I turn around to Bill and Jimmy. I go, yeah, same guy, exactly same guy, James something. I don't get the whole name. And we're driving around. And I think we drove all night. I don't know. But in that time, I said, he moved to Florida and he killed somebody in Florida. He was put in jail in Florida. And oh my God, he killed his roommate in the prison. Oh, and they let him out to come up to Morristown to kill. What the hell is wrong with some people? Parole board let him out. He's Polish descent, and I'm going on and on. Because once you get the thread, if you think that all the universe is connected, all the energy is there, once you pull on a thread, it's downloaded.
See, that's crazy to even think that that's possible. I don't know. It's just for me to.
No, all energy.
Amazing.
We always said there's a science a theory called Caesar's last breath.
Right.
Do you know that one?
No.
Okay. It states that the molecules that pass through him on his last breath, everybody has had of the air.
Right.
Right. Everybody has had that one, Caesar's last breath. But so is true of so much else. There's an energy connection between all. And, Wi-Fi is a parallel unit to what we've got. So, and Da Vinci said it. And then asked how he did so much, so easily. And he said, focus the light in a direction and keep it there. And when you want to change it, focus the light in that direction and keep it there.
It is really, again, conceptually, I believe the same type of thing that we talked about this before, not to interrupt you, but more so than religion and faith-based beliefs of the afterlife and how things work. I believe more conceptually in energy and the universe type of rhythm and plan and energy and frequency that connects everything.
So
I'm just saying that it makes sense to me that if you were to tap into the right, like you said, string or signal or frequency, that sort of all of that stuff would play out.
Sure.
For that one person.
And you got to be open to
and
it.
the connection. So it is really interesting.
Crystal says, being open or to the degree we're not open, is really the psychology and the emotions
Right.
that determine it. If we get so emotional, and that's a funny part for me to say right now when I've said I experienced Amy, but I wasn't emotional. She was.
Yeah, you were feeling
Right. I was re-experiencing, hoping that by having that kind of closeness to the fire, so to speak, that she would be allowing some energy to connect with her and she wouldn't be so terrified of all energy ever again. I think it's the same one we're here when people are victims
right.
and or dying. I love being with people who are experiencing something in crisis because I know I'm an anchor. I can anchor them. I'm not afraid with them.
It's funny you mentioned that because we were discussing again going into buildings or even objects that people believe have attachments to them, and if there is a spirit connection, that if their last experience in this life was something brutal or traumatic, murder, getting hit by a car or something, um, like you said, how difficult would it be to make that connection just on a
Well, it depends.
questioning level? Like you go into a building, is there anybody here? Could you say your name or something like that? Are they going to immediately reach out and try to trust someone if their last moment was being victimized?
I think a lot of times it has to do with the giver and the receiver.
Right.
So if you're the receiver, one of the things I teach people in classes is put on the healer's hat and stop thinking that you are in charge or that you can control it. Be their best friend. A
Right.
healer is not going to change and fix things. They're not the engineer who's going to fix a broken anything. But the healer is going to offer compassion and comfort and empathy. And
Bear
make,
witness.
right, make a safe space for the other, whatever it is. So, yeah, I've worked with suicide. They come through pretty easily, most of them. I love them. But I think the difference is when I learn not to judge the soul or the person, but rather the action,
Right.
made a huge difference in being able to get very close to just about anybody. I mean, Tom Manning's away for life. He gets a half hour outside a week. He's allowed a half hour visit for killing a state trooper. He didn't shoot, by the way. His cousin did, Dave, but he'll never say that. He said he did. But Tom, I loved talking with him. I disagree with him, and I disagree with what they did totally. And when we worked that case, it was with Stadies and local also. And I told them, you got the wrong people because they had a warrant out for somebody else. And I said, nope, it's the Uncle Dave or something they called him. I said, you got the wrong warrant. You need it for him. And I was right. And so I told them what car they had. And so they had the warrant. And then they didn't want me to go with them where I knew I could find them for whatever reason. I don't care. That's not the point. The point is you can judge an action and say, I am happy to nail people who do the wrong thing. I really enjoy it. I like putting away people who rape and murder. It's a good thing. And other things I can't talk about, but yeah. And the others are harder because it's hard to judge when you get into things like espionage and all that. It's really hard to judge what's the truth. And I'm not talking about.
Well, I got to say that there was I have to say this because it just what she connected to and talked to, especially from the circumstance where I'm coming from, where you did that what you called that prayer circle with your psychic.
We're getting. You're like she said, we're getting ahead. I want to get back to the Amy Hoffman because we're at the point now where because that's part of it.
Yeah.
We're at the point now where you could describe the car. you have the name, and you even have almost the last name. You have the K and the Vitch.
Right.
So you have this guy's complete background. He was from Florida. Blah blah blah.
Right.
There was more. You mentioned that his brother owned a gas station or was a mechanic. I mean, you had all of this.
That's how we got the cars.
But he was caught in a weird way. That's what was real.
Yeah, well.
So that gets to the prayer circle or the psychic circle.
Okay, so, oh, that was nice.
See my segue?
It's perfect because I want to know, because what happened to my daughter, there are people that are going to prison, but not the right people.
Ah. I believe in karma.
Yeah, me too.
I do too,
Sooner
but
or
I
later.
definitely want to know how you do that psychic prayer
So
thing.
let's get back to so you get a bunch of people together because they haven't caught this guy yet.
No, Thursday nights, whatever night it was, I taught. I've been teaching since 75, a kind of an open class at that time where people would just show up, about usually 20, 25 people. That night, 4 people show up. And they're 4 people I know and trust. Now, while most of them have some glimpse that I'm working with police and I have a badge, they don't know the whole story. They don't know what I've ever worked on. Because at that point, I'm not telling anybody. And I sat there and I said, look, I'm going to reveal a lot of things tonight. I need you to follow along, keep your hearts open, no judging the people involved, love the souls, despise the action. That's fine, but keep it separate. You can't put all emotions on everything. It won't work. And so we did. I revealed everything that I knew. And then we held hands. And I said, and I used the word God because it's a term many belief systems use. And it's, for me, it's not somebody sitting on a throne or anything. It's a word that means there's a creator source of some sort.
Right.
So the words I used were God. We need to ask you if it's within the spiritual path of James something itch to please give him back what he has given to women and stop him from harming any other people again. No more. And if you do that, we send our energy for it. We ask you please to just receive our energy. We don't know how to do it ourselves. Thank you. And that was pretty much the words, kind of. Very simple. And the next day, Jimmy calls me in the morning. He said, what did you do, Nancy? I said, what did I do? And I'm thinking, because we were on the phone every day at that point, because I had gone to Mendham. I knew a cop had tickets given to James, etc. We went through that whole thing and nothing. Every day we called and said, we don't get it. I said, I swear, 5 different towns called him in. I swear it. I know this. And they're saying, So he said, what did you do? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, about James Kadadich. I said, that's the name. That's the name. And he said, yeah, I know. He said, a woman with shoulder-length brown hair ran him off the road and knifed him in the back. I said, oh, okay.
Oh my God, what are the odds?
And you had the long, dark hair.
I did. Just, well, yeah, but this isn't. It was a few years ago.
But what are the odds, again, of all the things happening in the world that did he confess?
No, he never confessed.
Oh, okay. What did they found the blood in his car though, or something, right?
They dropped the blood of Amy's, and they found a hair in the trunk of Deirdre.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
No, I mean, honestly, I watched that episode, and I remember they called in the stabbing, and the police looked at the car and said that car matches what Nancy was saying, and the name, the James whatever Kokovich. Isn't that crazy?
Well,
So after something like that, though, do you get some kind of validation from the victims saying, "Thank you, we're at peace now"? Does that
I
happen?
didn't even hear it. What I do is just occasionally reach out, love them, see if I can do anything, ask for the universe to do. When I wrote my current book, I put it out, and I put a dollar of every book to the Hope for Justice, which is about sex trafficking and victims abuse. So that's all in honor of every crime victim. So wherever I go, whatever I do, it's about honoring the struggle, the change that's necessary.
Right. What's
Generation.
the name of that book?
Hmm?
What's the name of that book?
Psychic Detective.
Okay.
Pardon me.
I know. Throat's getting sore from talking.
In my phone. Yeah.
The other show that I watched, again, this was like that first show was just like, oh my God. And then I watched the second episode that you were featured in, Betty Cornish, 42 years old,
Oh.
Belvedere, New Jersey. Do you remember this one?
Do I remember this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, not only do I remember it, but I am still very close to everybody involved in.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not close to the relatives of anything. I'm close to the law enforcement. One way or another, a lot of cases I work on locally, at least, I get to know everybody, and we all know each other well.
That was Dave Heater, right? The detective?
Dave, yeah.
So let me set it up really fast. Betty was found murdered in her apartment, discovered by her boyfriend. And he calls the cops and says, my girlfriend is bleeding and I think she might be dead. The police come and they immediately, he's a suspect because, let's face it, the boyfriend, husband is always the first person they look at, especially in a crime of that magnitude that looks like there was some passion involved. How do you get involved now with this case?
Okay. I got it. I had a client come in probably a day later.
Right.
And she sat opposite me. And I looked at her and I knew tragedy. So I said, you just had a tragic loss. I am so, so sorry. I'll help if I can. And she said, I need your help. She was crying. And I said, your sister? She said, oh, yeah. I said, murder? She said, oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I said, She said, will you help us? I said, do you know who's working on it? And she said, yes, from the prosecutor's office, David Heater. I said, oh, he knows me. I said, give David my name and tell him I'm happy to help. Just have him call me. And that's how we began. So David had me come to the office with his partner. Now, 5 years before, there was a task force on Princess Doe, and David was part of that task force. That's how I knew him.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, can I ask you something really quick again from my, if it were me and I said that to you, and you validated or you knew that it was my sister, I would kind of beg you, could you tell me what you know? Did they ever ask that? I mean, and say, why can't you just tell me?
She said to me, they have her boyfriend as the chief suspect. I said, he didn't do it.
Right.
And that's the only thing I would tell her.
Okay.
Said, I know he's so nice. She said, thank you. I said, I can't tell you who did it yet, but I promise you I'll do whatever I can. I can't make any promises about whether anything works or not. So I show up at Dave and they took me to the crime scene. And it's the first floor apartment and there's a landing, when you walk in before, and a staircase going up, and I look up and I go, the killer's up there.
Could you imagine?
And they said, there's a 19-year-old boy who lives with his mom. I said, no, there's another man there. They said, her boyfriend lives there. I said, yeah, John something. They said, yeah. I said, he's the killer.
Wow.
And they looked at me and said, no, can't be. I said, So we go in, and I'm walking in the living room, and I see the vacuum, and I'm looking at it like something's wrong. Okay. Vacuum doesn't feel right. The energy is odd.
Right.
Spiky. When things are spiky, I notice them. And so I went to the bedroom where the blood was still there, etc. And I'm staring at the bed, and I see an image of her hogtied, raped, and a hammer over her head.
Oof, jeez.
So I tell them this. Yeah, normally they know. Don't talk to me. Don't say a word, please. Just let me talk, and then we can talk. But if you talk, I'll make assumptions, and I won't even know I'm making assumptions.
Right.
And if I get nothing, I get nothing. But if I get something that's useful, good. I said he threw the hammer in the swamp, and he lives upstairs, and his name is John Reese. And they said, yes, that's his name. I said, he's the killer. They said, no, it can't be. We polygraphed him. I said, well, So we came back, and we went over the whole thing. We're sitting in the office, and I said, listen, he's got a Western belt buckle he wears. He's got a scar on his right cheek.
Oof.
And they look at me, and they said, no. I said, yes. You have to understand, we're together for hours. And for me, when I know somebody a little bit, you're my old friend, and I can say it any way I like with you.
Yep.
And I'll just tell you, I don't care. I treat my husband that way. I treat everybody that way.
Mm-hmm.
Equal arguments. All right. So they look at me. I said, go back and look at him.
Yep.
And they said, well, we polygraphed him. I said, well, let's see. She died about 1:15 a.m. They said, no. She died about 11 something. I said, no, 1:15.
Wow.
He was still alive. And they said, no. And I said, oh my, okay, goodbye. So I go home, I get a call back from them saying he has a Western belt buckle and scar on his right cheek. I told you. That's the same thing I say to my husband. I told you I was right.
Well, he had an alibi, right, for that time frame that they initially had?
Till 11:30 on polygraph.
Okay.
So because of that, and then it took 10 days for the autopsy at those years, or whatever, they were backed up to come back. And yeah, she died around 1:15. And
it
so
did seem like he tried to frame the boyfriend, just from what I picked up from the story, what they found, the fishing and the...
Probably. Yeah. So, of course, Paul, the boyfriend, was no longer subject. And he called me, and he still is in contact with me every day. People who've had that kind of horror happen, we all get very close.
Right. I can imagine. I mean, this is an experience that not many people can relate to. I mean, let's face it.
It's a bond you never break with them. Can't.
Yeah.
No.
It's just the woman's sister is a very wonderful, dear friend who just lost her son. So I know all of them. And then the mom, Betty Cornish, was a nurse. She had 5 daughters, I think it was. And the best friend of one of all of them, I met at a convention in Utah when she found out I was also talking, and she didn't believe it was the same name. How could it be? She said, she's also the one I see on TV. They said, yeah, she's the same one.
Mm-hmm.
Because all my friends know. I mean, that's my other job.
So they went back to John Reese, right? They questioned him again. Did he confessed, right?
On video.
That's crazy because I saw the video of him confessing and he just was so cavalier about it. Like,
Right.
did they ever say why he did it? Was it a crime of passion? Did he assault?
No.
Did he rob her or did he
Well,
just
first of all, it's not passion that kills.
Okay.
It isn't. I mean, when a guy rapes a woman, it's not because he likes
No, I wouldn't consider it that either.
thing. So it's not passion. But
Right.
the vacuum cleaner cord was what he hogtied her with.
Okay.
He just wanted what he wanted, but I suspect he's a serial killer. They
Yeah.
never asked him because Dave Heater, in going over it with me, he had old notes. I didn't know that on Princess Doe. And he looked at me and said, "Do you remember describing the same person and the same name 5 years ago?"
Oh my God.
I said, "No, but you're talking about Princess Doe case?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "He's a serial killer."
Oh
They
yeah, yeah.
They never talked to him about it. And
Hey,
prior to Princess Doe, there were 2 men involved. There was one man who took in a lot of young runaways, and John Reese, who would go back from Pennsylvania to
It's nuts.
yeah. Well, we'll never
Now,
know.
do you ever now just sitting there? I know nobody reads the paper anymore, but do you ever now just like see an article on the online and you're like, bam, 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 bam.
I won't. I never
No.
did. I refuse to. I don't open that door unless I can be of service. So if I see something, I believe my job, because I truly believe we're all souls and that we're all connected, that when I see something that's painful, if I'm not in the middle of crying over it, I will simply quiet down and send them all love and surround them with light and be useful, because I do believe that the real power lies for everybody, not in things. Not in things. Not in tools. Not in stuff. Because you forget where everything comes from.
Right.
Even if you take it any which way, everything was created, even on this earth, extracted from different things and put together by ideas. Where do ideas come from? How do you get them?
Right. It is the big question, isn't it?
Well,
How it all works.
I think that's the real power. That's why I teach soul to soul power, soul adventures, sacred soul powers, because I believe the soul comes first, and we can't forget that. The illusion is that this all matters more and we're all separate. Well, that's fine, because we're all unique, individualized energy fields, and that's great. And we're here to learn, and it's a big playground that's crazy, for sure. Yeah. And it will challenge everybody if you let it, and stretch you to the limits. But it's still, if you don't remember your soul, you're missing the boat. So when I see things, I don't read into them at all now. I never have.
Wow.
I wouldn't look at anything. Even when I saw the newspaper report on Amy, the only reason I even looked at it was that her best friend,
Right.
and that couple I knew. Well, her best friend, I'm still in contact with.
Okay. Wow. So how do people get in touch with you for the workshops, for the teaching and everything that you offer? What's the best way for people to reach you or reach out to you?
It's got to be by email or on my website. They send a message through it to my email address. So I have two. They all go to one separate, but it's NancyOrlandWeber.com.
Okay, so I'll post that after we're done here so people can go to the link.
Christy asked a really good question. A really good question. Christy wants to know, how do you work on healing your soul after trauma?
Oh, I love you.
That's a great question.
Oh, man. What a heart.
We get caught up in the trauma and we lose sight of everything.
Absolutely. Look, we all handle the initial, any crisis, we take our pattern into the crisis. So sometimes in the crisis, we can change on a dime because it's tremendous power, or we stay exactly with our belief system.
Right.
But that part is the immediacy, right? It's when we notice it has set up a pattern in us, which we'll all call looping. We know that. For me, it was I wasn't entitled to have any kind of balance in my life, and I attracted trouble, etc., and financial trouble, whatever else. And so we all have different looping patterns from trauma if it stays and doesn't get processed out, right? Well, trauma usually then reverberates, let's say you're 16 and you have a terrible trauma.
Right.
There's a book called Molecules of Emotions. It's a very old book by Dr. Candace Pert, P-E-R-T, neuropeptide expert, who explains what happens, where the emotions go, and what happens to it. And so in trauma, we get this chemistry that can get locked in. We call it shock and lock. So if we're in shock, it will lock. And then it will cause triggers all over the place. Continual. Plus, it will open up old doors that we didn't even know because we may have been pre-verbal, pre-cognitive, pre-anything. Genetics, epigenetic, all kinds of things just open up from that door, because if you look at it as all of a sudden a steel trap inside that doesn't allow anything past it without taking a look at it and seeing if it's part of my, so it can grow and grow on its own. The processing out on a very practical level,
Right.
really practical, neural right here. You have to get both hemispheres involved, because if you ever saw people who have been terribly victimized, horribly, and survived, who aren't in trauma from it, I was raped more than once, and the stranger rape, I was poisoned, I was almost murdered. I can talk about it openly. I have no shame. I have nothing. I couldn't care less. And it's not whether I don't forgive the action. I don't judge the soul. The action's inappropriate, and if I ever found anybody like that afterwards, I would nail them happily. And I do. So I get that, but the processing has to occur. And you have to get that idea of what happened and the generating of emotional pain, mental pain, emotional pain, because mind is part of your nervous system. It's everywhere. And it's got to go through the right and left hemisphere of the brain. And it won't, by definition, in trauma. That's what it means. It won't process. It'll go to the shortcut. So getting it back up and moving it takes work. I find that there are things I found along the way that I use, and I love self-help tools. One of the things I recognize is we have senses. We have touch, taste, feel, all of it, smell, and that they are relays that can assist moving trauma, because the right kind of music will keep you in both hemispheres. It's been studied, it's been tested, it's been everything. If you go to my NancyWillenWeber.com, go to the blog and look up something like Gift of Music for Everyone.
No, it's definitely true. It's a trigger either way. It could bring you up, bring you down, or keep you.
No, it won't bring you down.
Well, I listen to some music, it brings me down.
No, I'm not talking about regular music. I'm talking about the music that keeps you in the right hemisphere.
Oh, okay.
While you're processing, while you're looking at the issue. There's a therapy called EMDR. Some people love it, some don't, whatever. I like mixing everything up over the years. So I've used the music a lot. I created it also with permission from the authors of the book Super Learning. It's how the brain processes. So if you're in both hemispheres working on it, then I got into essential oils and I studied the chemistry to find that there was only one company I found that meets all the criteria of no game. Soil content, chemistry, everything is perfect. Okay. And I started putting all the things I know about senses together. And grief therapy is also what we're talking about, because it's a loss even if beings are alive. I mean, I went through a lot of work on screaming, getting it out because I stuffed it, getting it out. I'd sit in the car and I would just scream to beat the band because normally I wouldn't. Now I do because I'm married.
Hmm.
I had to say that, sorry. My husband has a great sense of humor, thank God. Anyhow, the processing is not an overnight thing, obviously, but
Right.
the noticing of other things along the way. So I have to be very careful in what I'm telling you now because of the FDA and FTC. I did a what we call an ABA research study. It's a 6-week, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on children who have extreme special needs. I'm allowed to use those words.
Right.
And I taught the families that were nationwide to use certain things, a blend of essential oils, shipped it out, and contracts, etc., published. And there were 9 that were nonverbal, for instance. 7 became verbal in less than a week.
That's
A
amazing.
50-year-old went from 0 focus to 100% because the basic premise is unburden the system.
Yeah.
We live in a world of taking in more petrochemicals than anybody has ever taken in anywhere. America is number 1 in the petrochemical industry. So an average woman with an average diet and average personal care products and household cleaners takes in more than 1,500 a day. And your grandmothers didn't take that in a lifetime.
Even with that Aquanet hairspray?
Lifetime. Men just
that's
about the same, maybe about 1,000 a day. It destroys the liver, and liver is a communicator to the brain. It destroys the bacteria in the gut. It does a whole host of things, and it causes neurological transmitter errors. That's why I know, and that's why I did this study, was I knew I didn't know the outcome would be that successful. We have several of those no longer having special needs within 6 months.
Wow.
Because we also afterwards could teach them quickly, assess your environment, assess what you clean with. It goes to your brain. So how can you keep processing trauma when you're traumatizing on a chemical level? Because that's also trauma.
It makes sense. I mean, you're getting stuck.
Yeah.
Except when you're taking cholesterol pills and things that you really need.
No,
That type of stuff.
I'm not arguing.
I was telling Nancy before we came on how I'm a person who, if I go to the doctor and she says something's wrong with me, I'll say, "Do they have a pill for that?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, but you're not. Give me the pill. Give me the pill. I don't want to change my life and my eating and my habits. Give me the pill so I can eat my pasta and my pizza and everything else."
I'll talk to Crystal just for a moment. When he unburdens other things, watch the magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we discover with everything. I mean, I changed. Anytime I saw the issues I was having, I happen to know, we all know changes every second.
Right.
Everything has changed. So some people have to control parts of it. And when we let go of those, we make room for something else. And I don't know if this answered Christine or not about processing. So the thing that I like to do and suggest is, if you're intent on truly changing that pattern, you need to have a belief system of total commitment, not to finding answers and not to pushing it. Quite the opposite. Because you can't open a door if you push it in the wrong direction. You can't put pressure on it. But if you let it swing open by your belief and your commitment, you will attract everybody you need to help you, to give you the right tools.
I told you, Master Yoda. She said it. You writing this down?
I don't have to. I totally relate to it.
I need to write it down.
Again,
I forget this stuff.
Listen to you.
I need another page,
Feel
Nancy.
bad that
No,
lady sitting next to you has said very similar things.
yes, having gone through very traumatic trauma myself,
Sure.
younger, the type of trauma I went through, most people don't survive mentally, let alone. I've always said to people that I've come across that have had trauma, it's not the physical trauma that stays with you. It's the emotional and psychological one that we have to learn to release and let go, to heal and become whole again. And I always say to myself, especially when I was in it and got past it, that wasn't me. That wasn't the person who I am now. That person was someone else. It's no longer my trauma. This is the rebirth of something completely different.
You didn't buy it. You know, because a lot of things are about control and ripping power away from others. And when we do not accept that as anybody else's right, we've made sure we are intact in our power. And
I give nothing away that I do not choose to do willingly.
I think, you know, trauma causes the broken trust. And
Yeah.
what we learn from it all is there's a study done on the difference between a tsunami survivor and a survivor of attempted murder or rape or physical abuse by family or anything like that. It is far more serious to our psyche when it's our own species attacking us.
Yeah.
We have a inbred knowledge that the earth is the earth, and you have no say whether a tsunami comes. You don't have any, you know. But when it comes to everything else, it's a broken trust.
Yeah, because it's one of those things where,
Sure.
you know, like a murderer, killer, rapist, there's something empathy, sympathy, there's something lacking that most of us have. That's why I think it's so hard for us to grasp that one person could do that to another because we're not capable of it. You know what I mean? That's why I think the real, like, your brain can't process that.
Well, you're not supposed to.
Right.
You can connect, but
Right.
connection has to be, you stay at a high frequency. You don't drop it because of them.
Right.
And that's all the difference in the world. You know, that's what Crystal was just sharing and explaining, that if you allow your soul to come forward and talk, Christine and any trauma victim, you create an idea that the soul is always present and that it is the power generated going through you and you receive it. And that is far more important than the world around you, and that anybody who does anything to you, through you, from you, with you, even wonderful things, terrible things, you don't lose sight that it's your soul that you need to stay in communication with. It is your power. And it's going to guide and attract the right things if you make a commitment to listen to your own soul. It won't do you wrong, ever, ever.
That's how I got this guy right here, this good guy.
You know, Nancy doesn't even believe that. She's laughing.
She knows you're a good guy. You're a great guy.
Don't you? She's going to choke on her candy. You got to stop that.
They're not candy.
Oh, okay.
It's essential oils with
Okay.
just hardened into a lozenge, and they work.
People were asking if you do private readings, Nancy. Do you still do them, or very rarely, or?
I do 1 to 2 a week.
Okay.
I think I'm booking January or late January or February now. Something.
And that's all Nancy. Her name is right there. You can see it on the page, but I'll post a link to her website so you could follow her. And if you want to follow up on her courses, again, this is an hour and 15-minute conversation, and I'm sure we've just
Oh my God, it feels like it's only been 5 minutes.
This is who Nancy is. I told you, I was talking to her on the phone, and my head hurts from learning so much. I'm still gonna.
You But Crystal
Nancy-
has the same thing. I'm sorry, John, but Crystal has, and you said it to me, by the way. And you said, you know, Crystal's just like you. She has the same belief system. She does all right. You've got Yoda right there. Look, she's so cute.
Yeah. Yeah, but you see, he lives with me, so he doesn't listen.
I know.
To me.
I always say hi to a third party if you want them to hear the same thing, and just
Yes.
say exactly what you said. Sure.
I have to plead the fifth on all of this and just nod my head because that's a
Here.
smart thing to do.
Put out your ears. Don't worry.
Nod my head. Nancy, thank you so much for
Thank you
doing
for
this.
having me
I
here.
really appreciate it. It was great talking to you the first time and the second time, and I got a feeling that we're going to be friends and we're going to talk a lot
I'd like
more.
to have
and-
her back on again if she's
Oh
willing
yeah,
to
you
do
kidding
it.
me?
Love it.
But I appreciate it. And again,
You are such a team. I love it.
frickin' frack.
Hey, my husband and I, you know, if we differ, everybody has to stay away while we differ.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She can be really mean. She's not showing it now, but I'm
Oh,
I'm the
no,
I'm the
no,
teddy bear. I'm the teddy bear.
But you
and
got
the
to really
understanding-
push me to bring that meanness out.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. Yes. You hear? you know how I agree with
And if the meanness comes out, run for the hills.
All right, Nancy. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Oh,
Stay
you
safe,
too.
stay healthy, and thank you again.
John.
Take care.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Take
Good
care.
night, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
Appreciate it.